It's Tuesday, August 6th. We have a regular meeting of the Personnel Audits and Hiring Committee. We also have a special meeting of the committee. So in keeping with the theme of the last week and a half, our degree of difficulty is a little high. We're going to see if we can execute a regular meeting and a special meeting. I'm sure we can do it. I will call to order the regular meeting. Can you call the roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Very good. Councilmember McOsker?
Here.
Councilmember Soto Martinez? Here. And Councilmember Price? Here.
All right, thank you. We have 7 members on the regular, we have 7 items on the regular agenda. We're going to have one special, as I said, we'll take up after the agenda. I'm going to recommend that we take items 3, 4, and 5 on consent, which means we would have 1, 2, 6, and 7 for discussion. But first, we'll take public comment on everything. So again, the tablet is broken in the back, or the kiosk is broken. If anyone wants to speak on public comment on any items on the agenda or items under the jurisdiction of this committee, please come forward. I think Teresa is going to speak. Take your time. Come forward. Just let us know what you're going to speak on, and then we'll get started.
Good morning, everyone. Teresa Sanchez, Service Employees International Union, Local 721. And I'm also a member of the Targeted Local Hire Working Group, which oversees the Targeted Local Hire and the to Jobs program. I just wanted to make the committee aware that I've had numerous conversations with department heads, hiring managers in many city departments since your fiscal year 24-25 budget was passed regarding the priority critical hiring program. That I guess let me just back up and saying, when you passed the budget, we thought the intent of the council at the time, we thought we had a mutual understanding that targeted local hire, bridge to jobs, our alternative pathway for current part-time employees was going to be, in a sense, walled off from any kind of obstacles or any kind of slowing down of the process.
Go ahead, one more minute for your public comment and the TLH program.
So because of the PCH committee, I call it the clandestine committee, nobody seems to know who's on it, but they're creating obstacles to getting people in the door and on board our local community members that have historically faced barriers to full-time civil service employment. There's nothing rational about the process that anyone can see. The money's been allocated, the work in the field, the frontline work serving our city residents and visitors is out there. These are critical positions, frontline positions that need to be hired as quickly as possible. So we wanted to alert the committee to that urgent situation.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers for public comment? Hearing none, then we'll close public comment. We would move to consent agenda, and I'm proposing that items 3, 4, and 5 be taken on consent. Is that fine?
Yeah, I actually have some questions regarding 4, but I know it has to do with the PCH process, so we could hear it after item 6. For me, that would be the ideal.
Okay, so is it okay if I have the same concern, but I think it's fine for us to move forward. I think it's fine for us to move forward with item 4. We will still have all the PCH issues in front of us, but I'll pull it off if you like.
Yeah, I want some questions.
Okay, so we'll pull off item 4. So colleagues will leave 3 and 5 on the consent agenda. Item 3 is to note and file the controller's transmittal. Item 5 is to approve the exemption. Clerk, can you call the vote?
Councilmember McOsker?
Yes.
Councilmember Soto Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Price?
Yes.
Okay, those 2 items are approved.
Thank you very much. Then we move to item 1. Clerk, can you read item 1 into the record?
Item 1, Personnel Department report relative to the plan year 2025 LAWell program.
Hi, I'm Paul McCuskey from the Employee Benefits Division of the Personnel Department for this report. So before the committee is our plan document for the 2025 year. The Joint Labor Management and Benefits Committee meets on an annual basis, or actually on a regular basis, but adopts the plan on an annual basis, covering the benefits that are going to happen for that calendar year. Our benefits that we offer, everything listed in the report, is through a procurement process. So we go out to bid on a rotating cycle. We usually do about 2 different benefits a year. And we have gone out to bid for this year for changes to our life, disability, accidental death dismemberment, and our healthcare and spending accounts. We've gone out to bid in the prior year for dental and our assistance program, and then in the year prior to that, in 2022, we went out to bid for medical services. The benefits each year are dependent on whatever we are able to negotiate through our proposal process. We work with 2 different consultant companies that help us develop our RFP proposals and make sure that we're identifying the services and making changes to those benefit services as best we can and soliciting the services from these vendors. And we go through a long, arduous process with them on trying to make sure that we're getting the best benefits for the city as we can. If for 2025, there is an increase in services or increase in cost of services for our medical plans, we also are seeing a across the board flat rate for everything else, with a small change and decrease for our tax advantage spending accounts. Medical has been one of the sticking points with the committee and sticking points for us to be able to look at from a financial basis. Year after year, medical has been increasing. We've been hearing from the providers that they are incurring costs from still reaming from COVID expenditures. For the past 3 years, we've gotten an increase from them that's been almost double digits each year, specifically citing those kind of overhead costs that they're not able to recoup from all the expenditures they have, that they've incurred, increases in people seeking care, increases all around. And so that's the reason why they're identifying that there's additional costs being passed on for the premium. This was identified quite a while ago. In 2022, we noticed that this was a recurring occurrence from our medical providers. So we did create an ad hoc committee to look at what the city can do or what the JLMBC can consider in changing medical plans to make them more affordable and making them more sustainable over time. That committee has been meeting regularly and developing a plan of action to be able to recommend for moving forward for 2026. But as of right now, the services that we have with Anthem and Kaiser were contracted services from 2023 to 2025 with those services in place, and they're each year they're renewing and talking about for premiums each year, what their cost advantages or cost incurrences are. Sorry. So that's a position we're in for this year. The city subsidy that pays for these benefits is tied to the Kaiser rate in current structure. So the Kaiser increase of 5% is being paid by the city. Employees that are enrolled into any Kaiser plan under the structure don't have any out-of-pocket costs. Employees that choose to elect Anthem for their health plan coverage would be able to get subsidized to the Kaiser rate, and then anything that's not paid for by that premium amount would be paid for by the employee. So these benefits that are identified in this report will be made available for employees during open enrollment for them to select and choose which benefit is best for them, and whether or not they want to continue paying the premium price that's identified, or if they wanted to make a plan change. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, a couple of questions to start. It sounds really technical, but I think it's important to me. You talked about going out to bid. These are really, aren't these our RFPs where we get the best value and not just the lowest cost? So these go out to requests for proposals on a periodic basis.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And right now we are where in the current award for the medical benefits provider? Where are we in the process for the multi-year award?
So this program has authority under the Ad Code to be able to go out to bid for 5 years completely. We are in year 3 for medical with the option to continue for 2. It is going to be the JLMBC's decision on whether or not we're going to continue for a year 4, if we're going to go back out to bid for 2026.
So it is, you call it a 5-year because it's 3 with an opportunity to go 2. It's not 5 with an opportunity to go 2 more, is it?
It's the first one, correct. So it's 5 years total that we have authority to do so. We typically execute a contract with all our benefit providers for 3 years with the opportunity to extend for additional 2.
And then within the award of the proposal, within the award and then the contract, there are caps on increases, correct?
That's dependent on what they bid. So that comes through in the proposal itself. Hopefully that the vendor
In the
proposes
current, I
rate
just
cap.
mean in the current operation.
For 2025, actually, Anthem had a rate cap which is identified in the proposal. So they were identifying their price increases were going to be 25%, but they had a rate cap in their proposal of 11%, and that's why 11% is the cost that's moving forward.
When the JLMBC looks at this issue, or when the city family looks at an issue of being in year 3 and having the opportunity to continue for 1+1 or continue for 2, what is the lead time that it takes for the JLMBC competently to say we are going to go back out to an RFP process?
There's not much, unfortunately. So for us to be able to have open enrollment happen in October for members.
No, I don't mean whether there's lead time right now to not continue. I mean, what is a reasonable expectation for how much lead time you would need? Because that will dictate, extensions.
Okay, yeah. For if I'm understanding the question correctly, moving forward, we would need to go out to bid at the end of the calendar year to be able to make a selection for the following calendar year afterwards. So we'd have to go out to bid around December of this year to be able to make a selection and put it in place for January of 2026. If I'm understanding the question correctly.
That's exactly what I was asking. So then, what are the techniques that the JLMBC and the family community, the city community can use to, curtail rising premium costs?
It's complicated, and that's actually why we joined this ad hoc committee to be able to look at this further and identify different options that we could consider and try to get bidders to compete. That's the biggest component, is really to get more health companies to come in and try to compete for this service. But it's a challenge to try to provide an option for healthcare for our employees that is not taking away the level of service that they're getting. We're told from our consultants, from our health plan providers, that our plans are very rich in benefit, that they cover a lot of services. And so we don't want to diminish that. We don't want to have a health plan that has less service for it, but we do need to figure out a way to be able to make it more affordable. So we're looking at different plan options. We're looking at different ways that we can modify the plan structure. We're looking at a whole bunch of different things to see what we can do to solicit a better bid from a company that is a more sustainable rate.
When you say looking at, this will be my last question, colleagues, for now. When you say looking at different options, that is really an analysis one goes through to prepare for the next RFP.
Correct. So we
would call for a range of options and ask bidders to fit within that range of options, and the challenge is to create a range and a program that will work for our employee base without limiting how many folks can bid on such a thing.
Correct. And we recently released an RFI asking for a whole bunch of information so we can build that better.
Okay.
So we're hopefully in the next few months we'll come down with a plan or a good objective of what we can try to do to rein these in.
Thanks. Colleagues, questions?
Thank you for that. I'm assuming the JLMBC is composed of all the labor partners.
You need to. There you go.
Better. Is it all the labor partners in that organization? JLMBC.
So it's a 10-member committee. There's 5 labor members and 5 management members. On the labor side, it's SEIU, FESME, and 3 others whose name I can't think of right now, but I can bring it up real quick if you're interested. But yes, they do represent the majority of the labor.
As you mentioned, we have a very generous package of benefits. If someone leaves after 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, how many of the benefits are portable? What can they take?
Well, they would have to do it through application. So under federal law, we do have to provide COBRA, so they could continue those medical, dental, and vision plans through COBRA, but our plans are very expensive. So usually it's more affordable for an employee to find coverage on their own and not continue COBRA. And then our life insurance is also portable or continuable by application.
Thank you. Yours, Sheriff.
So in your best estimate, what would be the time period, the next reasonable time period for the JLMBC and the city family to consider going back out to an RFP process?
It's already part of the consideration, and in the next few months, a determination should be made. So really by October, November of this year, a decision is going to be made on whether or not we're moving forward with an RFP process, or if we're going to be looking towards to continuing the current extension of contracts.
So this is very much like, for this committee, this is very much like our workday analysis, when you can converting over benefits like this come in a cyclical package, and you have to make sure that one has to make sure that we do it in a time period where everyone can, we can set up the program and the folks can elect to be in the new program or which portion of the new program they're going to be in. So so it basically comes around once a year.
Correct. Yes. In that time period, right? So when we go out to bid, in any typical period, we're going to go out to bid in December. It is a lot of information. We actually, for medical, we compose a committee comprised of, last time it was about 8 different raters over various different aspects to be able to look at everything within the RFP, and then come down to a determination by May. And from that period of time, it's really a lot of work to be able to compose all the data and understand what the recommendation is fully going to be, to select a vendor and then put everything into programming and get everything live for an employee to make a selection in October.
Will our consultant, this will be my last question, I promise. Will our consultants and will our team be looking at the issue of where we are today with the different networks? I mean, it's not lost on us, on anyone, that if you live in certain geographic areas, you have great hospitals and your network is going to include a whole bunch of things. If you live in another geographic area, you might not have convenient access to a network of hospitals or care providers that are as beneficial as the other area, that are as complete as the other area. I think West Side, far East Side, people that are driving from greater distances. And the relative value of those networks are different. Are we looking, and I will say, if you live in an area or if you have the ability to conveniently go to, Cedars or UCLA, you're probably a higher paid employee. If you don't have the opportunity easily to get to Cedars or UCLA, but you're going to a hospital in the Inland Empire, perfectly great hospital, I'm sure, perfectly great place to live, but the values are different. Are we looking at how our employees are each contributing to the system for fairness and equity?
We are, and when we actually go out to bid for RFP, especially for medical, we provide census data to the potential bidders to let them understand where our employees are located, what their current level of service are. All that information is provided to be able to try to attract and make sure that we're getting bidders who understand our population are able to serve it. I think the challenge is going to be whether or not, if we introduce a new product, that employees are actually going to go towards it. And also the challenge is going to be, can we get a bidder to come in and provide those services or actually compete? I know the city's process is cumbersome and sometimes can be distracting towards prospective bidders to want to go through the ramp system and all the processes, but our consultants help. They make sure they're trying to advertise our solicitation and encourage bidders to try to participate and go through all the city's processes.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying inarticulately is we got to make sure we're protecting from having a proposer buy the business by having lower paid employees underwrite the cost of the health plans of higher paid employees. That is a way to buy the business.
Understood.
Great, thanks. I'm going to call, yes.
Did you say the increases, the proposed premium increases, are going to be absorbed by the city and not passed on to employees?
The 5% that Kaiser is increasing, that amount is going to be fully covered by the city because that's the way the structure is written. So anything that Kaiser lists as their premium is city paid. So that amount is going to be completely paid by the city, and anything above that amount would be paid by the employee. So for the 11% increase, 5% is paid by the city, and the remaining 6% is paid by the employee if they choose to keep that plan.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. So I move that we approve the 2025 LA Well program, including the employee benefit plans, benefit plan premiums and rates, and the design features. Mr. Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember McOsker,
Yes.
Councilmember Soto Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Price.
Aye.
Thank you for that report. Appreciate it. We'll call item 2 into the record.
Item 2, Personnel Department report relative to the implementation benchmarks and hiring goals for the targeted local hiring and strategic workforce development task force for June 2024.
Very good. I think, Councilmember Soto Martinez, I think we'll take item 4 and 6 together. Is that okay with you?
That sounds good.
All right. Let's go to item 2. Oh, good morning. Thank you for being here. Go right ahead.
Good morning, council members. My name is Cynthia Fletes with the Personnel Department. The report before you today provides a summary of the hires made through the Targeted Local Hire Program and Bridge to Jobs program during the month of June 2024. During June 2024, 40% of hires into classifications used by the Targeted Local Hire Program were made through the TLH program, which equates to 7 out of 15 hires. Departments with the highest number of TLH hires in the month of June were Fire and Police Pensions with 2 hires and the Public Works Bureau of Street Services with 2 hires. Additionally, in June, 58% of the hires made into classifications that are part of the Bridge to Jobs program were made through the program, which equates to 7 out of 12 hires. Departments with the highest number of hires in June were the Department of Transportation with 4 hires and Police with 2 hires. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. The one that really jumps out at me, besides our low number of hires, is gardener caretaker. Civil service hires 7, TLH 0. That seems counterintuitive. Do you know anything behind that? I'm glad to have the 7, but it seems like it would be should be quicker to hire under TLH than through civil service for a gardener caretaker.
Most of the hires for gardener caretaker in the month of June were at the airports departments. They do run a parallel vocational worker, so it's possible that some of the hires were either from that separate alternative pathway program or individuals that were on the eligible list and given an opportunity to be hired for full-time service through the TLH program. However, I'm happy to follow up with the department and get specifics for this month and report back.
Okay. Is it possible what you just said is that if there's an equity program in a department that we don't call TLH, that it just gets recorded as civil service?
Correct.
Okay. Questions, members?
Yeah, I have some questions. I think I just want to sort of continue to, the discussion from last time about trying to focus on departments. Because, just to refresh everyone's memory, I said on the committee that you have and asked a lot of questions about how you do the fairs and how you reach out to people. And, again, I would say I think you're doing it very well. But one thing that came up was the department's ability to accept those folks or for them to take those folks on. I think last time we talked about just trying to focus in on a couple of departments if we could. The one that sticks out to me is the custodian. I know that lives in many different places. That's a very high number. Or administrative clerk, that's a very high number, but that maybe lives in various departments. And I think Councilmember McOsker, Chair McOsker, is perhaps bringing the departments here. I think will also be helpful for the next meeting. But I think we talked about that, but I know we were in recess. So, but has there been any just follow up on your end, like in trying to suss out where the bottleneck is and trying to increase the numbers with the departments?
Yeah, one department that we've been having conversations with is airports, as a matter of fact. They are exempt from the PCH process and they are interested in hosting a one-day hiring event. The conversations are ongoing. They're doing a little bit of work on their end to figure out exactly how to maximize the event. And so the conversations are ongoing. We don't have a target date yet, but as soon as we do, we'll be happy to share with your office.
Okay. I mean, my suggestion would be to have someone from LAWA here maybe next time for the next report, and then we can get both departments here.
For my staff, maybe Lawa and Harbor. Harbor just increased the number of maintenance workers that they're going to have on their various properties. Sorry.
Who else is exempted? Who else is exempted from the program? You mentioned airports, although they're doing it voluntarily.
Has their own programming, right? Has their own sort of program
Right.
that's not, they don't call TLH?
Departments with alternate programs that are not part of the targeted local hire program include departments such as LAWA, Harbor, the Public Works Bureaus. Those are some of the departments that are currently running programs that utilize
And
these
DWP.
classifications. And DWP, yes.
Our goal looks like we're about halfway there. Any idea when we were going to achieve our goal? Well, let me back up. For the past, this month we had about 10 or 12, correct? The last several months, it's been about 10 or 12 applicants per month coming on to the program.
General Manager.
Just curious,
Brown?
yeah. We're just.
Good morning, members.
Good morning.
I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that those departments are not exempt from participating in TLH. They are able to use TLH.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Just in some cases, they are not using it. They'll use the agreements they have in place. We also have another agreement in place with some classes. It's not necessarily departments, but when we brought up Gardner Caretaker, it reminded me, because I know that Rec and Parks also uses the alternate pathway for part-time employees. Those part-time employees who have been on board as part-timers for a particular amount of time are also able to transition into full-time positions using that alternate pathway. So I think that as Ms. Fletes goes about giving the statistics, these are statistics where we have used TLH, right, as opposed to the alternate pathway for part-timers or the other agreements in place at places like the Board of Public Works or the Public Works Bureaus that have the WED program or the vocational worker program that WAWA has. So there are these other programs that are out there that are hiring people, and so those hires don't get counted towards TLH, but they certainly can use TLH, with the exception of the Department of Water and Power, who are not a part of the agreement.
Other questions? I think we're going to touch on some of these issues in a couple items from now. Particularly, why don't you just tell me, is TLH in the PCH or not? Does one have to go through PCH to hire somebody as a targeted local hire or bridges? Because my understanding was the answer is no, but I'm hearing otherwise.
So the PCH process, and I know we have an item for PCH that if I am misspeaking, that the CAO can help. But the PCH process is to get authority to hire. How you're going to hire is a different question. So I'll let Mr. Sehal.
That is correct. What PCH would be reviewing are those classifications that TLH participants are able to fill. We're not looking at TLH, we're looking at the classifications and the services that those positions will provide those departments.
I know we'll get to this in a minute with the next item, and we seem to have a sort of a convergence of three items sort of crashing together right now. But if I walk in, if I'm with a department, if I'm a department manager, and I have a position, and I want to hire someone under TLH, do I have to go get on agenda and sit in front of PCH and do a Mother May I?
What they would have to do is submit a request for the position itself, not for how they're going to hire, as Ms. Brown said. It's for the position under the PCH process that was established.
So is there any circumstance where I, as a general manager, walk in and I have a TLH candidate, I have a position, I ask the PCH, yes or no, and I get a no?
Well, I mean, it's theoretically they would not have identified or made an offer on a position until they actually had authority to hire.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else on this item? Any questions on this item?
No, I just want to say thank you for bringing that up because we've been here before, and I thought it was. I sense your frustration. I thought TLH was not going to go through the PCH process, but yeah. I thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. Thank you. On this item, any other questions? Thank you so much for being here. And I will say, I move that we note and file the report. Clerk?
Very good. Councilmember McOsker,
Yes.
Councilmember Soto Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Price.
Yes.
Very good.
I think we're going to take items 4 and 6 together.
Okay.
And so if you could read each of those into the record.
Okay, item number 4, CAO report resolution relative to the fiscal year 2024-25 unfreeze resolution. Item number 6 is continued from April 10th, 2024. CAO reports relative to the prioritized critical hiring process updates. This matter's been referred to both PAW and the Budget, Finance, and Innovation Committees. Budget and Finance Innovation Committee noted and filed this item on April 17th, 2024.
Perfect. Thank you. We are joined by the CAO and by...
Hi, good morning. Mary Orellana Farias, also with the Office of the CAO.
Perfect. Thank you. Why don't you go right ahead and give us a brief report, if you wouldn't mind, on just sort of an overview of both 4 and 6.
Item 4 is before this committee is the 24-25 unfreeze resolution. Subject to the admin code, it provides the departments the authority to fill positions that are vacated through resolution. It's an annual report that our office releases. The one distinction this year is that because the prioritized critical hiring process is still in effect until council takes an action, we did include a sentence saying that hiring is subject to the PCH process.
Okay.
And item number 6 is the various monthly PCH reports that have come before this committee in the past. I'm sure that we could probably, not necessarily go deep into those reports. They just provide some of the statistics relative to the PCH committee. Mm-hmm. And we, could dive into the questions you have about PCH.
Sure. I have, as you just heard, I have very particular questions about TLH and bridges and any other, I'll call them equity programs, which I believe, as a matter of policy of the city, should not be impeded by PCH. And I do understand that's something that probably needs clarity from the entire city council. That'll be ultimately my recommendation. But I want to come back to the bigger issue. We just went through a difficult budget process where we made really, really tough choices, and I think the right choice to cut a whole bunch of vacant positions, which had the effect of cutting a whole bunch of funding, to put ourselves in a position where we are, we, according to our best estimate, are on track to be able to, resume the government, if you will. I have just a basic question. Why are we still in PCH? Why do we still need PCH? We've cut, nearly a couple thousand positions. We cut the funding. We now have vacant positions that we purposely left, or we have positions that are becoming vacant because people do, move on or retire. And if that was our best judgment, that the amount of money we left in the budget, it gives our general managers the ability to do their jobs, it strikes me, and this is just my position and not the official position of the entire city council yet, that we should put general managers in a position to be able to hire without going through a many weeks long process to go to PCH, maybe get a yes, maybe get a no.
I think the simple answer is because while we made our best effort at determining what we think the revenue for this current fiscal year will be and what we think our expenses for the current year will be, we just don't simply have any data to support that revenue or the expenditures that have been adopted as part of the budget. Just recently, you've seen the news about the macroeconomic conditions of the United States, mm-hmm. and how, now economists are predicting perhaps a downturn. Our revenues weren't predicting a downturn. Our revenues were predicting kind of historic growth, not historic, like traditional, annual growth that we've seen in the past years. Mind you, that was based on a revised revenue for the closing fiscal year, which we now know will we won't even make that revenue. So we lowered our revenue for last year, knowing that we were not seeing those receipts coming in. But based on the data that we're seeing today, and mind you, the controller hasn't closed out the fiscal year yet for last year, revenues do seem to be below what was even adopted as a revised budget. So that data point is showing weakness. We have another data point in the reserve fund, which we already had, as part of the adopted budget, shown below 5%. So if that revenue for last year is lower, that's going to dig into the reserve fund. So that data point will likely be weaker than we expected. On the expense side, liabilities was an issue last year, and liabilities will be an issue this year. And already in closed sessions, I'm sure you're seeing a whole lot of judgments, settlements being proposed that are going to dig into what we have budgeted, way beyond, I believe, what we have budgeted. So again, that's a negative point. And then we have the uncertainty of one remaining large labor deal that's out there, that while we made our best efforts to determine what it could be, the cost-wise, that may fall short as far as what ultimately the costs are for next year. So, I mean, like I said, we really need some additional data to determine when PCH can come off. We're not opposed to having PCH come off by all. We're not trying to micromanage the departments. We just want to make sure that the decision to remove PCH is based on the evidence that supports removing PCH, much like the feds have, shied away from reducing rates because they're looking for certain economic trends. I think we're in the same position. We need to withhold from removing PCH until we see those economic trends support removing PCH.
Ultimately, my position will be that using PCH to be a way to slow the flow of money to employees. Really, what you've just described, I understand, and it makes sense that if you don't know whether our budget numbers for income and expenses are accurate, I almost said real, accurate, that one way to reduce spending is to slow down hiring, which you just described. Yes. But it creates very artificial constraints on departments that disallows general managers from making decisions on how to spend their money. And the PCH process is almost like a distraction where we're going to spend several weeks or months, and in the meantime, we're not going to be spending that money, but we're also not allowing general managers to manage their departments in a way that makes sense for them. And so my frustration with my acceptance of your answer that we're uncertain, but my frustration with the answer is that there are other ways of doing this. Maybe we dig back in and find out, whether or not there are additional cuts that we need to make without sort of artificially doing it, which will have the effect of general managers just playing the game. And with all due respect, the PCH is that committee, whatever it is really not the place where we should be managing our human resources and deciding what services get provided and which don't. We should be pushing that down to the folks that have the professional expertise to run things like parks and animal shelters.
Yeah, I would just state that I actually think departments are managing, because what PCH is doing is making them prioritize what they submit to PCH for approval. So they're not submitting all of their vacancies at once for approval. They're determining which ones do we want to push forward now and put our weight of our department behind and get support for, which is why when we receive it, we know that departments have made that prioritization, and these are the ones that they're aiming to approve. And just to cite statistics, PCH has approved 93% of the full-time and part-time positions that have been requested. 93%. When you just look at the full-time positions, the rate's a little bit lower. It's 74%. But mind you, these statistics include positions that are no longer there. So these include positions that they were requesting to be filled that ultimately the budget eliminated.
Well, page one of the attachment doesn't tell that story. I'm not saying that you're inaccurate, but what page 1 tells me is that of the 1,500 request, almost 1,600 requests submitted, 300 are pending, which is part of my concern. Pending for how long? 788 approved and 346 denied. And that's 60% of the ones that are actually considered. You throw in the ones that are pending review and the numbers plummet. So
Well,
I'm sure it's an effective tool to curtail spending. I don't know if it's an effective tool to manage the city. And here's the last thing I will say. Sure. Because it's not really a question. When the city council adopts a budget, the city council is making all of those decisions as the elected leaders of the city. And when the mayor signs the budget, she's she's agreeing that this is what the elected officials believe are the places we're going to spend our money. When then the PCH says, when we say to the PCH, we say it, you know, hold the phone, you guys go off and you decide whether or not we're going to implement our budget or not. We just gave away the budget. We just gave away those decisions, those tough decisions. I'm not buying after what we went through and slashing the budget, making decisions, I'm not buying that the PCH process should continue. That's all. And it's really not a question. And I don't doubt that all of the analysis that the committee does is, well intended. Questions, members?
Yes, question. First of all, thanks for the report. I agree with your earlier statement that TLH and Bridge should be priorities for departments in hiring. We should be able to really make it easier for departments who want to use the process to bring folks on those positions. We need to do a better job in prioritizing. That's all. You talked about the procedures for implementing the PCH process. My question: are there any other key metrics used by PCH when determining whether or not there's going to be a exemption?
When we're looking at requests that are coming in, whether or not those get approved, is that the question? Or
yes.
I mean, we do look at, actually, I do want to state that we do consider, if the department is submitting a request for admin clerk, we know that likely will be a TLH type of hire. So we do consider that, we do make that consideration into, like, if a department has certain classifications that could benefit through a TLH hire, those are factors that weigh in as far as the ultimate decisions that are made. So while we're not directly, saying yay or nay on TLH, we are considering that as a factor.
Mindful of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you for the explanation. I just want to repeat back what I think I heard, just so we're on the same page. Now, we made some very difficult decisions, and I think what we were presented with a decision to basically eliminate the vacancies, and that was going to save us some money. And then departments were then given the opportunity to submit requests, right? Even if their vacancy was eliminated, they could say, well, I actually do need it. That was going to go through a review. We adopted the budget. We made decisions on which positions, right, as a council. But what I'm hearing is that since then, there's still a lot of unknowns, right? Revenues are changing, right. Taxes are changing. And so now what we're doing is, even for positions, when someone retires or transfers, or doesn't matter, like, so now because of that unpredictability, we now have to do PCH with even those positions. Basically to do with every single position.
Correct.
Okay. So I get that we have to be responsible, lawmakers, and everyone has to be responsible. And so what it sounds like is that the fear of allowing departments to fill those vacancies, however they want, could lead to a situation where now revenues are even, the deficit is larger, and we don't want, we don't want to be in that position where now perhaps we have to do furloughs or other things like that. I mean, I'm just, there's where my head is going,
yes.
Right? But the thing that I don't understand is, why can't there be a sort of global analysis of positions that we can't do without? right? If I were going through this in my office, if my, God forbid, my legislative director were to leave, right? I know I need a legislative director. Like it's such a crucial position. I know I need a chief of staff. I know I need, my scheduler, right? There's some crucial positions that we can all agree we can't do without as a city. And so why can't we do an analysis and say these are the ones that don't need to go through the PCH that we can all agree are crucial. And I know people are going to make the arguments that those are crucial and essential, but we know what is and what isn't. I think we know what is. Why can't we just do that?
I mean, I think theoretically, every position in the budget would fall under that criteria, because why ask for a position if you don't think it's crucial or necessary? I mean, I think every department is going to say that at their positions. Otherwise, they would have, submitted that position as an offset for something else they wanted to do. So the budget process allowed for departments to submit offsets for things that they wanted to do, and frankly, we didn't get too many of those offsets submitted, which is why we had to look at vacant positions that were there at that time.
Yeah. I've heard that from, again, I'm new to City Hall.
No, I understand your frustration, and I hear the frustration of the committee. And I would say is that we should strive to find a way to, remove ourselves from PCH, but with the support of the data being there. So we could continue to work on maybe compiling some of the data for you, and we're going to have some more data when the controller has the year-end closing report, their preliminary financial report. That'll show us the status of the reserve fund. Starting at the current fiscal year, we'll have more data on what departments are at the end of the first FSR. So I would suggest let's look at that information coming in and revisit PCH at those points as we go along.
No, look, I think there's different ways of approaching this. I think that we can be, fiscally responsible and not put the city in a financial situation without having to go this process. I mean, nothing stops the departments from, hiring is so slow in the city. It's not like tomorrow, all of a sudden, all those positions are going to be filled. I mean, we could look at it every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, and then and then stop it at some point. I think the thing that's frustrating to me is hearing that departments are losing or because they're retired or someone transferred, and then now they have to go through that process all over again. And I just think that doesn't make sense to me. I think that in this sort of moment, I think that it requires a little creativity. And so I look forward to what the chair we can think about. But I just think it seems too restrictive, it's too slow. It just doesn't sit well with me.
But I just want to make the point. We have tried very hard not to make this process onerous for departments.
No, I know, I get it.
So if they have a vacancy that occurs, a week ago, there's a way for them to submit requests to fill that by next week.
Yeah, but I think that it served its purpose for a moment in time. I think, and I know I'm glad we did it, but at this moment, right in August of this year, I don't know if it's correct. But we'll
Sure.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussions about how we move forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. I would thank you. I appreciate that. This line of questioning. My sense of it is that when we talk about which positions are critical, we made that decision. We made that decision in the budget. We cut a whole bunch of positions. We talked to every general manager. Everyone made tough choices, and I understand the described purpose of the PCH, but in my mind, we are at sort of a point of a policy choice, maybe, within the city council. Did we do enough in the budget to now back off and say we are going to live by our choices and allow general managers to do their jobs? I am still of the mind that the PCH creates, arbitrary effects on how we deliver services. And so I'm not going to be interested in continuing it. I think that's a different motion. I think that's a discussion for this committee and the full council. I think.
Just a question, Mr. Chair. So item number 4.
Yeah.
Does this bind us to A PCH process?
Perfect. I was just going to ask that question. Tell me what is the effect if we don't act on item 4?
Departments will not be able to hire.
Yeah. So the sort of the unfreezes that you've done is imperfect in my mind as it is, would not be able to move forward.
Right. So what's before you actually allows, unfreezes the majority of the positions out there for departments. Now they still have to review to get through the PCH process, but if you get rid of PCH process and you don't approve the unfreeze, they still can hire.
Then we have a hard hiring freeze.
Yes. So you should, my recommendation is that you approve the unfreeze resolution with the wording of PCH, and then if you get rid of PCH, then that, in essence, will, you get rid of PCH, and so then departments are able to hire as they have traditionally hired before.
And remind me, the tool that put PCH in place, was that a council?
It was council and mayor
full
action.
council action?
Yes.
With the mayor's consent?
Yes.
So, members, based on this discussion, I think with our eyes wide open, we approve item 4. I think that we receive and file, or whatever it is the correct action for item 6. But heavy foreshadowing. I'd like to bring a motion to
Yeah, we welcome that.
to wind down PCH, but that's not on our agenda today. So, Mr. Clerk, can we call item 4?
And for item 4, Councilmember McOsker,
Aye.
Councilmember Soto Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Price.
Aye.
And for item number 6, Councilmember McOsker.
Just to be clear, note and file the CIO reports dated July 5th
Okay.
and August 2nd, 2024.
Good. Councilmember Soto Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Price.
Yes.
These
Thank you
reports are
very
noted
much.
and filed.
I appreciate the complete discussion.
Yeah.
And accept all of the rationale. I think we just have some of us might have a difference of opinion. Thank you. Item number 7, can you call the record?
Item 7, motion McOsker Blumenfield relative to the implementation of the Human Resources and Payroll Project.
Thank you. I've heard of this one before. We are joined by our team of experts. Do you have a report on where we are with Workday?
Ted Ross, General Manager with ITA. I'm going to ask Romy Barriere to go ahead and provide a quick verbal update.
Good morning, council members. My name is Romy Barriere. I'm with the KPMG team, and I'm serving as the project director for the HRP implementation. Since we provided the last HRP update, the City of Los Angeles has processed and distributed pay for the pay period 1 in fiscal year 25, and has processed and is preparing to distribute pay for pay period 2 tomorrow, August 6th. The focus of the project team has continued to be a successful payroll processing, providing supports to departments, and addressing incidents received from department staff. As of 10 p.m. yesterday, there were 823 open tickets related to support needs, an additional 294 on hold for further discovery. The project overall, since go live, has closed 4,976 incidents or tickets. And the overall incident trend is showing a decrease in the number of incidents opened by employees and departments. Overall, regarding emergency checks in pay period 1, we saw fewer emergency checks processed than we had in the first pay period in Workday, which was pay period 27, from 938 down to 594. It is important to note that the use of emergency checks at this stage of go live is broader than it was previously under PACER, as a policy decision was made to ensure that employees were not impacted by the transition. Under PACER, an emergency check would not have been cut in order to cover an underpayment and overtime. Instead, the issue would have been remediated in a subsequent payroll. Of the emergency checks issued in pay period 1, about 353 were for the LAPD to address employees who did not receive a uniform allowance.
Can you repeat that
Sure.
number?
So the total number is 594. About 353 were related to a uniform allowance. So the project had loaded the uniform allowance information for staff as of a point in time. So if they had it last year, we preloaded it this year. And there were about 354 sworn officers who had subsequently joined since that date and time. So it hadn't been loaded for those individuals.
And I'm sorry, I missed PD or FD?
PD, LAPD,
okay.
correct. And again, this was related to a uniform allowance, not the base pay. This issue has been corrected moving forward, so all of those individuals who require the uniform allowance now have that loaded in the system, and that will continue to be updated as new employees come on board. Of that 594, 183 were for the LAFD to address overtime underpayment that was found in pay period 27 and pay period 1. This was related to an integration issue, which has since been corrected. The remaining 58 emergency checks were distributed amongst 9 departments in support of missing timesheets or other issues that prevented the individual from being included in the payroll run. These checks continue to be processed as hard checks, as testing for the direct deposit configuration of emergency checks is not yet complete due to competing project priorities, including finalization of the prior pay period adjustment tool. The prior pay period adjustment tool is the primary focus of the controller team, in addition to running a clean payroll. The team continues to focus on testing and finalization of that tool, which would allow departments to make retro payments for transactions occurring prior to the workday go live. In addition to the focus on the PPA tool, overall the project is focused on reduction of incident numbers and finalization of efforts related to the hypercare period and then transition into the extended support state and system enhancement and backlog activities. So we've been working to stabilize the project, run a cleaner and cleaner payroll each time, resolve issues with departments and anything that might be emerging in the city so that the project can begin, or the city overall can begin to focus on system enhancement and a backlog of activities that were already needed to provide further support and improve processes for departments. That is my overall report at this time.
Anything to add? I have a couple questions. I'm sure we'll get to other comments. Yes.
I think one thing worth noting, as Ms. Barrier was describing, in pay period 27, we had 3,311 tickets submitted by users. In pay period 1, 1,688. In pay period 2, 967. So you're seeing a dramatic drop off in the numbers of issues and tickets. So to the point being made, we're seeing a more and more refined pay period as folks get more and more comfortable with the system.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Before I get to the emergency checks that we just evidenced in the last pay period, coming back to PSRs, that
Yes.
was the topic of discussion. How are we in the PSR shop today?
We are fine. We did not see any issues related to PSRs emerge in pay period 1 or in the pay period, which will be paid out tomorrow.
Okay. So staying in the cop shop then, the bulk of the emergency checks were these uniform allowances. Why didn't we not see that in the last pay period?
Yeah.
It's once a year because it's once a year.
It was meant to be paid out in that pay period.
Okay,
So, that's
so
why
it's
it emerged.
everybody at the same time once a year, and now if we fixed it next year, it'll be fine. Or as new employees come aboard,
It'll be added as they come on board so that when we reach that point in time during the year, it gets paid out.
The majority of officers received it, but a short list did not. And that was the issue that was described, and that issue was resolved.
Right. And that was an input issue?
Yes, the allowance wasn't added to those individual employees. It was mass added to the bulk of folks who had it at the point in time. And as new individuals came on, it just wasn't individually added.
And I will ask, particularly the controller's office, that's a lot of checks. How you're stress testing your office all the time. How was that experience then? Is it sustainable if we continue to have, once a year or periodic issues that pop up over the next year? Because the uniform allowance is one department, one issue, but these specials that occur department by department, we might not have experienced all of those.
Sustainability is a more complicated topic,
Yeah.
and I think we would love to talk with you about that. In terms of just emergency checks, I don't see that being an important issue going forward. I think that will abate. The sustainability issue is much more about our ability to fine-tune a system because there's a lot of manual workarounds still in the process. And we have a limited amount of time of support from KPMG, Accenture, and Workday. We have about another month of what's called hypercare. and then we go to a much lower level of support that assumes that the city government will bear the majority of the responsibility for working with Workday to solve the problems that come forward. That assumes the capacity of the city. And the last discussion on your committee agenda goes right to the heart of that. We have 48 less accountants in the city. We are a month behind in closing the books because we don't have enough people on board to close the books the way we normally do. And that's the challenge, is the city of Los Angeles capable of turning this system from one that pretty much works with a lot of manual effort, or a modern integrated personnel and payroll system, which this city, the second biggest in the country, deserves and has spent more than $100 million on, and countless hours of training and preparation. Are we going to have the capacity to follow through and get it in place so that it runs well? It's been my experience over the last year to admire and support Ted Ross and CAO and personnel's can-do effort. But it's been my role on behalf of the Comptroller's Office to say, we've gone from running on bald tires in this city to periodic blowouts. And that's a warning signal about our ability to actually execute, because now when this thing is more or less paying everybody week in, week out, people go on to the 16 other burning fires in this city and won't have the capacity to stay on top of making this system really, truly a functioning, effective personnel system, so we can do the training and the onboarding and the morale building and the career development and the bringing of people in from TLH and others, and really create the best workforce in the country, which this city used to have. And it still has the human capacity to do that, but we don't put the training and we don't give them the technology and the tools to perform in the way that they're capable of doing.
Thank you. The Brown Act is not designed for such large concepts that move from one item to another, but I take your point perfectly well. Thank you for that. So we have hypercare for another month, and I wanted to get to LAFD, because last time we heard LAFD, tangentially we heard, or in the discussion we heard that LAPD was the big issue, and we spent a lot of time on PSRs. Really grateful for the attention to it between then and now. And now I want to come to LAFD. Can you give me the nature of the challenges, what the origins are, and how we're addressing it?
So there was an issue related to the integration where information was coming over from LAFD into Workday, in which when that integration was running, it was overriding the standard rate that was in Workday, causing misalignment and underpayment in some of the overtime categories. So in order to do the due diligence and ensure that they were accurately paying individuals, the fire department worked with the project staff, Workday consultants, and others to kind of finalize the list of underpayments over the course of pay period 27 and pay period 1, and processed all of those underpayments in bulk as emergency checks, that resulting in 183 checks being distributed. That issue, once identified and confirmed by that due diligence and analysis of the individuals impacted, the issue with the integration itself has been corrected. So we don't anticipate that issue going forward.
So what roughly is the universe of firefighters who worked overtime in that pay period and what's the ratio of folks who got paid accurately and folks that didn't, roughly?
I don't have that information offhand, but the 183 is a small number as compared to the number of firefighters in the pay period.
Do you have that in the LAFD?
I don't have the exact number.
We're Chief Saunders.
We're joined by the Chief.
Yeah. Feel free to.
I just want to get a sense, Chief, of the extent of the challenge.
Sure. Orrin Saunders, Chief Deputy Administrative Operations for the Fire Department. So we have about 550 members that are underpaid for the last 2 pay periods.
Okay, out of, what's your total head count on sworn?
Go down 3,500.
3,500. And all those underpayments are overtime?
Most of the underpayments are overtime based.
And what's of the 3,500 firefighters, what's roughly the percentage? How many of them would have worked overtime? I'm just trying to get to how well it worked and how well it didn't work.
Yeah, we have a bulk of members that do work the overtime, and that's usually specific overtime rates are the ones that were impacted the most. So usually backfill, was usually for the force hires, those are the ones that were impacted the most because of certain pay codes that went in, and the integration paid those incorrectly.
So what are we doing to fix it?
So as I mentioned, we've corrected the integration issue that was causing the override, and we have since issued emergency checks for the largest amounts of underpayment. And I believe the fire department continues to work with the team to make those corrections for the remaining group between the 183 and 550 over the next few pay periods.
So we shouldn't see, when you say next few pay periods, does it take that long to fix the override or the integration?
No, that issue has been corrected. What they're now doing is just, again, finalizing the payment itself, the retro payment. Not all amounts were significant enough to require an emergency check, is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, so fixing the issue with the integration so it doesn't happen moving forward is the easier part, because you can just, hey, this rate was wrong. We're going to make sure it's not overriding with the wrong rate. When you have to go back and make those corrections, that's when there's a lot of manual effort. And so that's where the fire department payroll team and the HRP team.
So some people asked for checks, some people didn't.
It's more that the amounts that we have to go back and figure out what were you paid, what were you owed, that takes some manual analysis. So that's why that takes longer than just fixing it moving forward. So it's fixed moving forward, but all of the issues that happened for the last few pay periods, we're still working through some of those discrepancies to make sure that people are paid accurately for those differences.
They're retro pay. And
Yes.
keep in mind, we use a lot of jargon. The integrations goes to the heart of their half a dozen departments that don't enter their time directly into Workday because they have complicated work schedules and they have their own system for entering in time. And then that system has to speak to Workday. So this is not a flaw of Workday. This is a flaw of the integration between the fire department's payroll entry system and Workday so that they work together smoothly. And that's what's been fixed. But it isn't a problem within Workday. It's a problem between Workday and the fire department's existing system.
Yes, sir.
And what we're looking at is we're still not finished with all the emergency payments for the first 2 pay periods. So we've been doing those in 1 week of each pay period for the remaining in each. Yeah. So we're talking about from the first 2 pay periods, probably just about $500,000 of underpayments for those members.
Last question I'll have. When you LAFD, cut checks for members, and we're going to do away with this cutting manual checks because we'll have direct deposits, do you require folks to sign something before they get their check? Because to give you a little background, a couple weeks ago, we had this meeting and we talked to LAPD, and LAPD was requiring folks to sign a release to get their check, which I think is completely not only unenforceable, but I think it's actually extra legal, which is a delicate way of saying against the law. Do you guys do that?
The only thing we have a member sign is that they acknowledge that they actually received, so for an accounting purpose, they actually received the hard emergency check.
And if they don't sign it, do you give them the check?
They still get the check.
Okay, very good. Members?
I'll just say some comment. Thank you for those great questions, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, this has been a great job by everyone, despite all the many challenges, and especially want to give a lot of kudos to the controllers and his office. You receive the errors and or whatever mistakes, and you just have to deal with that. And so, please say my praise for the whole staff. I know you lost positions, and everybody dealing with that. Just want to.
James Robinson behind me is our division head over payroll, and James is just led a great team. So James, do you mind just standing up and on behalf of the team being acknowledged?
All right.
And of course, everything is shared. We've had tremendous cooperation across the board, but you're right. We're the ones who end up at the end of the process.
That's right.
So it's been a tough few weeks, but it is clearly moving in a positive direction. And that's why we need to maximize the next month of hypercare to get as many enhancements and fixes as we can, and then be sure that we continue down this path and don't just say mission accomplished prematurely.
Yeah, job well done. I mean, I know still some challenges, but I think we're on the right road, though. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you to everyone. I mean, it really, the level of expertise and the attention paid for the last 16 months that, at least a couple of us have had a chance to watch this. I do look forward to the moment when you come on down to council and we have a team hurrah for you. We're not there yet. We're getting close. So I'm going to just move that we continue this item to a subsequent meeting. And Mr. Clerk, if you could read this in the record, or if you could call the roll.
There's no need to call roll on a continued item.
Okay, continue item without objection. That will go. Again, thank you very much. Thanks for your hard work on this. Is there anything else for our regular agenda?
No, there's not. The desk.
There being nothing else on our regular agenda, I will adjourn the regular meeting and call to order the special meeting of this august committee. Roll.
Yes, Councilmember McOsker.
Aye. Here.
Councilmember Soto Martinez.
Here.
Councilmember Price.
Here.
Thank you very much.
Good.
So we are now in our special agenda meeting, and I will first call for public comment. This being a special meeting, public comment is relegated to the one item on our agenda, which is transitioning sworn and civilian hiring from the Personnel Department to the Los Angeles Police Department, requesting a report on that. Anyone that want to speak to this issue from the public? Hearing none, then we will call the item.
Very good. Motion, McOsker, Lee, Blumenfield, relative to transitioning sworn and civilian hiring from the Personnel Department to the Los Angeles Police Department.
This item just having been introduced on Friday and quickly brought to this agenda, I wouldn't expect any substantive discussion of it from our professional staff. I will, if this does move from here to the full council, I will, obviously we'll expect it then. But I just wanted to say for the record, what I'm looking for is an analysis of whether we can streamline or quicken the hiring of public safety officers in the police department by moving part or all of that function from personnel into the LAPD. It is, something that has occurred in the past, and I just want to get an analysis. I think we should have an analysis of whether it's something we should do in the future. And I will ask for an aye vote. I'll open up for discussion.
Question, Mr. Chair. First of all, I think analysis is certainly important on whether or not it be done. I was a little confused. Your motion, I thought, was to presume that it was going to be done, and you wanted a review of that. Mm-hmm. I think we should discuss whether or not that transition, in fact, should occur. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of curious, has the LAPD ever administered its own hiring process?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. We have the General Manager, Dana Brown, here. Thank you.
Good morning, committee. What I would like to get is a better understanding of what it means to conduct their own hiring process. In the past, LAPD has certainly been responsible for its own backgrounds process, but it has never been responsible for its examination process, nor does the charter allow it for any city department. The Personnel Department has the authority to do that through the charter, and so we do it for everyone, including DWP, and have always done it for LAPD. However, what we have now that we did not have in the past was really the backgrounds process,
Mhm.
which is something that they used to do many years ago. I think that obviously it's important to look at the factors that brought it to the personnel department. And then there have been motions in the past where council members have wanted to look at this. And we will include this in a report. The council file numbers, there was a motion from then Councilman Parks and then Councilman Zine in future years where this idea was also broached. So maybe looking at some of the things that were brought up at that time and some of the reasons why the city chose not, excuse me, to move forward at that time.
Now, at one time, the police did their own hiring?
At one time, the police did their own backgrounds.
Background, okay. And then
Yeah.
when was that taken away and why?
It was taken away around the time of there was a Rampart sort of group that was established as a result of the issues that happened at the Rampart station. And sometime after that, the personnel department took on the backgrounds process.
Well, I know you and your department have been very sensitive to the issue about speed. Well, what techniques have you done? What steps have you taken to speed up that hiring process in the last, I don't know, 18 months or so?
Sure. So, for example, one of the things that have been brought up is like expedited hiring. We have a lot of problems with candidates that are slowing themselves down because, for a number of reasons, they have the expectation that becoming a police officer will take a significant amount of time because that's truly the industry standard. Even though in some cases it may take us a little longer, in some cases I think that each case is individual and you kind of have to look at like what happened in that particular person's situation. But we put together an expedited process whereby we ask candidates on the front end, do you want to be in the academy in 90 days? Well, half of the candidates say no. And then the half that do say yes, then there are, you have to look at everybody's individual case. We allow a lot of autonomous scheduling, which kind of goes along with, today's technology advancements and things like that. We no longer send people letters that say, you be here at this time at that place, which might I add that when I was coming up, that's what they did. You were where they said to be. But this generation is more autonomous in its own scheduling. So, there are various reasons that they push something back, this, that, or the other thing. Also, we've had problems with having appointments like for medicals, those kinds of things. Certainly since the PCH process and we are hiring less people, now there are more spots available for medical. So there's just a number of things that sort of slow down the hiring, but a lot of that is candidate driven. And also, we have recently met with Madam Mayor as well as the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, where we talked about some possible solutions for, making some more wholesale changes to our policies that may also bring more candidates in. For example, we currently have I won't call it a weight requirement, but there is a way that you can be kept from moving forward because of your body fat. I think that sort of in a 2024 environment, there are some things that I'm a little concerned about as it relates to human resources practices, best practices, and wanted to have kind of a conversation around that. I know that there have been at least somewhere around 90 candidates this year who have been stopped in the process because of that sort of, I don't want to call it a BMI because we don't call it a BMI, but the point is that you can be held back based on your body fat. Things like that. I mean, so yeah. It's not one thing.
Okay.
There are a number of things.
So there are a variety of things to speed up that process.
Sure.
To your point, Mr. Chair, I agree. I think we need to do all we can to bring police and others on as quickly as possible. I'm certainly willing to look at the police doing their own hiring. I think we should have some kind of study, though, see what's been done in the past, and if that, in fact, is a there's a better way to do it, and some analysis of what the impact would be moving it from personnel to this department. So if that's our discussion, I'm happy to join you in that, yes.
Also, I would like to say that it would be good for the personnel in the police department to work together on this effort so that we don't come to the table with conflicting recommendations or, recommendations that are, against the charter or those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Okay. And that makes perfect sense. I mean, and in those discussions with the mayor's office, I understand some of those discussions have included moving some portions of the hiring process itself to LAPD.
Yes, so we didn't work together as we did made recommendations for changes. So their changes, are along those lines, and our changes are not along those lines. However, the personnel department is certainly open to whatever it is that the city believes would be in its best interest. I would like to also highlight the labor component. This functional transfer of duties would certainly impact employees who are forced to move to a different department. And so our labor partners really need to be a part of that conversation.
Sure. So what I would be looking for is a report back that analyzes all of the issues, everything from when portions were in the LAPD, when they were not, what the effects were. I mean, one of my grave concerns is that I was there. I was there when we moved it back to personnel, and we moved it back to personnel because the department grew fast before the '84 Olympics. And it was my boss's belief that it grew too fast. And because it grew so fast, we had officers who came aboard that should not have come aboard. And that may have contributed to the Rampart crisis. And I would like an analysis when this comes forward about how technology and research practices and ways of analyzing, the potential tendencies of individuals have changed, because we're not in '84 anymore. We're not in '92 anymore. We're not in '97 anymore. 2024. Just want to come up with ways where we can look at opportunities to not only hire, but hire the best qualified people. So this is a report back. Members?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, Mr. Chair, or comments. I guess the intent of this is to try to speed up hiring. Is that is okay? Well, if it's just a report, it's not controversial. But I want to take this opportunity to say again, right, what I've said many times, and what is happening, in my opinion, with the difficulty of hiring LAPD has nothing to do with our process, in my opinion. It is a cultural phenomenon that is happening across the country. Departments are this is not to Los Angeles. And I feel like we're in the 5 stages of grief right now, and we're still bargaining this issue. We'll get to acceptance, I think, by the time I'm out of office, but I look forward to looking at the report. But again, nothing to do with the way we work. It is just folks that are entering the workforce, graduating from high school, have been seeing videos of some police officers doing egregious things to the community, and it is not viewed as a job that they want to have, and that's what's happening. That's my humble opinion as a millennial and someone who has seen a lot of these things, and so I look forward to the report. It sounds like there are some very valid reasons why we moved away from giving the background process to the department. And it gives me a lot of trepidation to understand the genesis of that, why we moved away from that. Sounds like there's some charter restrictions that we're looking at. But again, it's just a report. But since we're talking about the issue, all right, the issue is why is LAPD struggling with hiring? I feel that just a responsible thing to just say the reason why I think it is. But if it's just a report, I'll vote for it and look forward to seeing what comes out of it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Clerk, can you call the roll?
Very good. Councilmember McOsker?
Yes.
Councilmember Soto Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Price? Yes.
That concludes our special agenda. Anything else in front of us?
That clears the desk.
We are adjourned with 5 minutes to spare.
Step is depression. And 5 is acceptance.
You know,